How we doing? We use the back cover as an invitation song. Coming home. Which won't take too long to get there. You know, if you pick any particular subject out of the Bible, there could be dozens and dozens of sermons made about it. But it's kind of hard to take a subject and condense it in 15 minutes to where it makes good sense. But I have tried to do that tonight. There's a verse in the Bible that I really like. I've read it over and over, and I want to talk about it tonight a little bit. And I've simply addressed it or named this as two Adams. Two Adams. And the verse is, so also it's written, the first man, Adam, became a living soul. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. And that's found in 1 Corinthians, verse 15 and 45. There's a lot in that verse. It could be dozens on top of dozens of sermons wrote on it by looking at all the aspects about it. I don't know if you'd ever thought about it, but there's only 3 people that ever lived in the world that didn't have a natural father. Didn't have an earthly father. And that was one of them was Adam. You know how he came about, and Eve, and you know how she came about, and Jesus. Adam and Jesus were made by a miracle. One born from the dust, and the other was from a miraculous natural birth. We know that the scripture, by it, how that Adam and Eve came into being, and we know that by a virgin, how Jesus was born. We've read all that. We've studied all that. There could be sermons made on each entity there that would last for days on end. But I can't. They all have similarities, both of them. Both of them have, Jesus and Adam have similarities. We talked about just a little of that a while ago. They were both married. You ever think about that? Eve was married to Adam. God caused a deep sleep, and he removed the rib and made the woman. And the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken of a man. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. That pretty much refutes all these things that they talk about. You have 3 or 4, a dozen, half a dozen. I know from people that's been married 4 or 5 times. I've got relatives that's done that. And it's ridiculous. But the Bible teaches that there's only one. There's only one. And Adam was a man. He was married. He married Eve. Christians are married to Christ. Christians are married to Christ. Therefore, my brethren, you also were made to die to the law through the body of Christ, so that you might be joined, and another version says married, to another, to him who was raised from the dead, in order that we might bear fruit for God. Romans 7, verse 4. Typical things that they both have in common. Another thing, they both have offspring. Both of them. Adam and Eve had children. The Lord had caused a deep sleep, to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took a rib from his flesh, and then he closed his side back up. And from that rib, he made a woman, and they bore children, which became his wife, of course, and then they bore children. Just as Adam bore children, Jesus bore children. When he went into the side, took the rib out, made the woman. They were married. They were put together. They had children. Adam and Eve had children. Jesus had children. And it happened this way. One of the soldiers pierced his side. Pierced the side of it, and forthwith there came out blood and water. So that's how that you cannot separate the blood and the water. I don't care how you go about it. It's always there. We can't do anything about it. And that's the only way you can come into contact with it. And if you do come into contact with it through baptism, you can become a child of God too, or a child of Jesus. All right. Adam's family began growing. We can study about it. Adam and Eve, they conceived. They bore Cain and said, I've gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bore, and his brother Abel. And then it tells Abel done this and Cain done that. They worked. They took care of things. And reading further through Genesis, we find that they had numerous offspring, not just those two, but more and more. Jesus' family began to grow on the very day the church was born, when Peter preached the sermon, the good news. Here's how it happened. Then they that gladly received his word were baptized, and the same day there were added about 3,000 souls. Acts 2, verse 41. And then it's just exactly like Adam's family when they bore the two, and they just kept on spreading out. So did the church. Like Adam's family, Jesus' family began growing. They were praising God and having favor with all the people, and the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. Acts again, 47. But we can see how that these things are similar. They're similar. The two Adams are similar. We see it growing too. All believers were more added to the church multitudes, both men and women. Acts 5:14. Just like Adam's family, you read on through Genesis, you find out where they're having more children, more grandchildren, great-grand. It just kept going. Here we are, and it's kept going. Well, God's children, Jesus' children, done the same thing. They were being added more daily. Acts 5, verse 14 said as they were being added to it, his family was growing. And another good thing about Adam and Eve had been placed in a wonderful garden. The Garden of Eden, paradise on earth. But they sinned before God, and he drove them out. We all know the story, all what happened. I don't have to relate that. But if it's just teaching a sermon, you might. You might get some technical. So he drove them out, and he placed at the east of the gate of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every which way to keep them from the tree of life. Genesis 3:24. Wherefore, as one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so passed unto all men, for all that have sinned, and for all have sinned, in Romans 5, verse 12. But by obedience to God, the second Adam, Jesus, he gained a heavenly Eden. He gained a heavenly paradise. Though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. And being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him. Hebrews 5, verses 8 and 9. By obedience, he learned. He became the author of eternal salvation. He's fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who is for the joy set before him, endured the cross, despising shame, has set down at the right hand of the throne of God. He's in a heavenly paradise now. Just like Adam was in a earthly paradise, he's in a heavenly paradise. And he's got his children here. Adam's children are here. I don't know if you thought about it, but they're here because we're here. We had to come from Adam. Well, we're here as Christians. We had to come from Christ. So we're all here. And you can't get out. You can't get away from it. So it is true. The first man, Adam, became a living soul. He lived here on earth. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 45. Now, the question would be, who do we want to really follow? Do we want to follow the earthly Adam and wind up like some of the others that we read about in the scriptures, or do we want to follow the spiritual Adam? The one that has a heavenly paradise, that his children can become part of that heavenly paradise. Have you ever been in a conversation? It used to be real prevalent, but it hasn't been in the last few odd years. Maybe I ain't just been at the right place, but I used to have to argue a lot, or I guess you could call it that, about a name, about names, names. A name don't mean nothing. No, a name don't mean anything. Nothing in a name. You ever heard that? You've heard that. You find religious people and they got a name. They got the wrong name. Oh, they ain't nothing in a name. We're all going to the same place. But let me tell you something different. Paul said, and there is no salvation in no one else, for there's no other name under heaven that has been given among men by which we must be saved. How do you get around that? How do you get around that? I don't understand how you can get around that. But these people in this world today, they're blindly staggering through this world, and they're going to wind up like some more people that we read about when they when they didn't do what they done, and God took them right on the point. Remember? The earth opened up and swallowed a bunch of them. Just think about that. Have you been watching any of the videos around in Florida where the earth is opening up and things are falling in? That's scary. That is scary. Those people that was transgressed God's law that did that, the earth opened up and swallowed them, they're gone. I think that we need to understand that there's no other name in the world that's ever been given. You can go back to Adam, the very first man that was ever here, and to today, the last one that's been born today. There's never another name given whereby a man can be saved. That's the only one. That's the only one, Jesus the Christ. We just got through studying in our lesson how that he has the ability to propitiate for us because he lived here like we did. He was tempted just like we are, and yet he overcame it. You know what that teaches us? We can overcome if we put enough effort into it. If we put enough effort into it, we can overcome. So we can overcome the world. He did it. He did it. I'm sure we probably can't because our little finite minds don't have the capability that he did. But we have to spend our time trying. There's no other name given whereby we may be saved. I hope that you might have got something out of that anyway. I had thought about that. I know Ron he could make dozens of sermons out of that topic. He sure could. And it might be a good idea sometime. You know, people get away from things. I hope it done you good. I mean, it did me for thinking about it. I mean, I could have wrote a book about it, but I didn't have time. If there's any in the audience tonight that would like to be subject to the invitation, whether it be a first time that you want to be baptized, or whether you want to have the prayers of the church, or just want to be prayed for, or you can let it be known while we stand and sing the song in the back of the book. Oh, blessed Lord.